Welcome to another episode of the Rescue Swimmer Mindset Podcast. Today we have the capital THE first rescue swimmer ever in the Coast Guard. Numero uno. Seriously, he's one. We are I'm 870, whatever.
864 over here.
There you go. So we have number one, and today the Coast Guard numbers are up in the thousands. So we have the OG chief.
And then he went to OCS. Retired as a lieutenant commander.
Yes. So we have him today on the podcast. But before we get into that awesome talk, a flash from the past in the history of the Coast Guard and the Rescue Swim program.
So I gotta read my little disclaimer. The views expressed herein are those of RSM and are not to be construed as official and are not to be reflected as the views of the Commandant or the Coast Guard.
Perfect Form Masterclass releases tomorrow. This is the last opportunity you have as far as buying it for 50% off. So in case you haven't heard us talk about what's in the program, the largest portion of the program is really breaking down the freestyle form. And we're talking from fingertips, literally describing how your fingertips should enter the water, the positioning of your fingers, of your hand, the angles, everything. We are going into geometry of swimming in this program. But the freestyle form goes from your fingertips all the way to your toe tips, how your ankles should be, how your toes should be, how your hips, how your elbows, the order of which things should be timing as far as like when your hand enters the water, when your pull stroke, when your recovery part of your stroke is. So everything is included within that freestyle form. That's the longest portion. And then we get into a lot of more specifics as far as things that you may learn in search and rescue, as well as just physical conditioning. So we're talking, Cody gets into the buddy towing, gets deep into that, gets into the egg beater.
Yeah, one of the big things in freestyle and when we talk about egg beater, buddy towing, is we give a ton of drills you can practice and use to perfect that form. So it's not just Vince chatting on about freestyling in his fingertips. It's chatting about it. And then there's like accompanying drills to practice in the pool that day.
Right. So you get the education, you get the knowledge that's included within these video courses, as well as the manual, which is, I think, in the 20-ish pages, if I'm not wrong on that. And then you also get a bunch of drills. So you get quite a lot of content as well as practicals that you can then go and implement in your day-to-day trainings. So that's the Perfect Form Masterclass on the RescueSwimmerMindset.com and pre-sales. And well, basically, this is kind of your last day.
You have about 24 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours.
24 hours.
Perfect Form Masterclass.
Or the price is going to increase significantly. And you can still buy it after, but it's going to be more expensive. That's up to you. Do you want to save money?
And especially if you like to save money, we haven't included Cody's.
If you pre-order this program, you'll get a 4-week program, basically straight up workouts, pool workouts. It was like designed to mimic a few weeks at Rescue Swimmer School. So the workouts are kind of intense, nothing too crazy, but it's just kind of a reality check, I guess.
Great. So you get that program included within the Perfect Form Masterclass. And not to mention, we've commingled a lot of the Hold Your Breath Like a Helicopter Rescue Swimmer course within that Perfect Form Masterclass. So it's kind of a 3-in-1. Again, it's a good one. Pre-sales and tomorrow. Perfect Form Masterclass on the RescueSwimmerMindset.com. Without further ado, the very first rescue swimmer, Steve Ober. One thing before we start, that's a little rude of a question, but how old are you?
61. I'll be 61 August 31st.
To me, that's fairly young. The first rescue swimmer is not like dead yet. Well, and you're just in your 60s. It's not that old of a program.
Well, no. Well, you got to remember, I was pretty old when I got to school, and I guess we'll go over that. But I was the oldest and most senior. When I went to OCS and 93, I was 33 years old.
Oh, wow.
So interesting background. Hopefully you guys get a kick out of it. I've had nothing but luck and no complaints.
Well, Cody, let's get it going.
And I assume I look okay for a 61-year-old, not like,
You look really good. That's the other thing.
Nice nose hair,
But you also look in shape too, which is really cool.
Good, it worked.
Yeah, you're.
Maybe from the neck up. Yeah. Multiple surgeries. Both knees have been replaced, hips been replaced, all due to being in the Coast Guard.
That'll happen. Jumping out of helicopters.
All right.
Let's get it going.
Pretty special episode. We have rescue swimmer number 1, Steve Ober. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks for inviting me on.
Happy to have you here. This is a cool podcast because the swimmer school has gone through so many changes since the 80s. I thought it'd be cool just to talk about your experience. We can talk about our experience a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited. Again, I appreciate the opportunity for an old guy.
You're swimmer number 1. And it just shows how young still the whole rescue swimmer program is. You're swimmer number 1. Cody and I were like in the 870s. We're high up there. At this point, I think we're there in the is it 1100, Cody? Is that accurate?
They're still in the thousands.
Okay.
And I know, Steve, you went to the ceremony for rescue.
Yeah, for number 1,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
He's actually stationed with me right now.
No way.
Right. Yeah, awesome guy. I think he was like, who are these old dudes? So you guys can swim? Seriously? Well, yeah, I don't know. You did what? Anyways, yeah, good time. That was another, it was great to see everybody.
Cody, how did that work as far as are they 1,000th rescue swimmer? Was it like him trying to time exactly how many failed tests he would get so he would nail the 1,000 swimmer? Because like if you do too well, you're going to be 998. If you do too bad, you'll be like 1,002. Was he like, I need to fail the perfect amount to be number 1,000?
Well, I'm thinking he was number 1 in the class, I think, because he got Humboldt. So he must have crushed it. And he's a good swimmer.
He was the honor grad. I think well, actually, I thought he was the honor graduate, but, excuse my memory, I could be off. It wasn't like there were 15 guys there. So it was a pretty small class.
Right.
But typically the rescue swimmer process, how it goes for graduation is the honor grad gets the first number out of that batch. So I don't know how that works. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I got a coin from him. I got his coin with number 1,000 on it, and he got mine with number 1.
That's awesome.
Whoa, very cool. Did you get to see the new rescue swimmer school?
I did. I was actually there when it opened up. I got invited to the opening ceremony. And then I still do consulting work for the Coast Guard, and we still do some aviation things. So every once in a while I have an opportunity to go in and, scrounge around, see what I can pilfer, whether it's a T-shirt, sweatshirt, whatever I can get away with. And then remind myself how lucky I wasn't at that training facility because it looks pretty hard. So,
Well, let's talk about your training facility back in the day, which year?
It was 1984. It was at Pensacola, Florida, at their Navy Rescue Swimmer School. I guess how did it all start? It all started with a group of us being selected Coast Guard wide, and I don't know the selection process. It was so long ago. We went to Naval Aviation Water Survival Instructor School. And the purpose of that is when the UER, the underwater escape rebreather, which you may have seen from a history perspective, it had an oxygen bottle, it filled up, and that was what your 𝐒𝐰𝐢𝐷𝑆 is today, right? So you were breathing 100% oxygen out of your bladder, right, in order to escape, egress from the aircraft. So we were selected. The head of it was Master Chief Daryl Jellicoska. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a legend too. E9. He or whomever selected a group of us, and we went again to Pensacola to Naval Aviation Water Survival Instructor School. And the purpose of that is, one thing, we all became WSIs, but we were then certified in every instruction device from water survival for the Navy. So that was the closest training we could do. Coast Guard didn't have its own, sweat trainer, not trainer necessarily, but program to qualify in order to do that. So they figured that was the piece that would allow us and provide us some credibility. But a funny story, you want to go back, Master Chief Jellicoska deemed the barracks at Pensacola wasn't adequate for us E4s through E9s, and I think there was 5 of us. I don't remember exactly. So we stayed in Gulf Breeze, Florida, at a Holiday Inn on the water, right? And we had rent-a-cars and we drove back and forth.
What?
So one more funny story without throwing anybody else. So Kelly Gordon was there with me, and this will transition into swimmer school. We arrived. We're probably the last guys to get to the hotel from the airport. We meet Master Chief, and one of the first things out of his mouth, and realize I may be a little off on my timeline or embellish a little, so I'm giving my caveat now. But the short of it is he sent Kelly and I to his car to get the coolers and his luggage out of the car. And Kelly was an E3. I had just made E5, and we were like, what? What? So we did, right? Just as we were supposed to. And there wasn't any luggage. It was coolers full of beer. So a funny story, the rules are so much different, but that's how everybody got introduced. And then we spent a month there learning how to swim. All became WSIs, perfected our strokes, did all those things, more swimming than any person probably should, start with. And then we finished that up. So there's the caveat into the swimmer school. So after that, the Marine Electric went on without giving a history lesson. Congress said we're going to act. Coast Guard said we're starting a rescue swimmer program. So the original people that were considered was us, the UER folks. And so out of the whole group of them, Kelly Gordon and I were the only people that said, sure, we'll do it. So that's how we got selected to go do it. Then there were other people Coast Guard wide because there was a message that went out soliciting applicants, but nobody had just finished up Navy school like we had. So they knew if nothing else, we could swim.
Right.
So, that was kind of, the reality behind it. Well, I graduated in October, so a month before. So September of 1984, we shipped off to Navy Rescue Swimmer School. That was it. There was no pre-training. There was no, we knew there was going to be an entrance exam when we got there, which is, I think, we had to run like a mile and a half in a certain amount of time, push-ups, sit-ups, and all that stuff. And so we arrived day one. That's what we were doing. So it was pretty incredible.
So this was two of you guys that went through what was called WSI?
Well, yeah, water safety instructor. So if you want to, for example, be a lifeguard, well, all that. That was one of the things that came out of it. So not only were we certified in all the Navies like the 95, the Dilbert Dunker, parachute egress, all those things, we were certified in all to instruct all those devices.
Oh, cool.
Right. And then we went through them, multiple times, had instructor training, all those pieces that went along with it over the month-long school. And like I said, a lot of pool time, and they perfected our strokes.
It was just two of you guys. And how did they come to you with this proposition of this new rescue swimmer? I guess at this point, it's like a new position in the Coast Guard.
I think it was as simple as, they talked to us on the phone and said, would you be willing to do it? So the answer was yes. And it kind of fits into me. I mean, at that point in time, I was looking to do something outside of the ASM rate. ASM rate was pretty, narrow. I enjoyed flying. I enjoyed search and rescue. I enjoyed new challenges. So maybe not having all my marbles in the right place, I said, sure, send me.
What is ASM for all the current coasties?
Aviation survivalman. Basically, we did everything from, at the time, weapons to parachute packing. We all went to, had experience in parachute rigger. I went to parachute rigger school itself in Lakehurst, New Jersey. I didn't go to a formal Coast Guard school. And then we did all kinds of different things. And then we were expected to be qualified in whatever airframe was at the unit, whether it was back in the time H-52s, H-3 flight mechanic, loadmaster, drop master, Falcon airframes, whatever the case may be.
Those big choppers. Yeah.
Yeah. They were fun to fly. I promise.
Well, I think it'd be more fun for the audience to get into what rescue swimmer school was like back in the day. So you guys are two coasties, and you show up to this. It's a Navy school.
Right.
What's the vibe check, if you will, as you first arrive?
What are you guys doing here? You guys, you don't do this for a living. We do it for a living. We have guys, out in the high seas saving all these people. The school's for elite, and our job is to either pass you with, whatever the qualifications are, or we're going to do our best to throw you out. It was awkward.
How many swimmers started the class?
Two coasties, Kelly Gordon and myself, and I think probably 12 others.
Okay.
And that was a mixture of Marines and Navy.
Got it.
Yeah, it was interesting. So we arrived. I think we were confident in our swimming skills, but I don't think anybody prepared us for the verbal abuse. Started 30 seconds after came. They were all over us, and the goal was, I think initially they wanted to throw us out just because we were going to be there. So the cool part is maybe not having the most education. Both Kelly and I decided while we were going to be, at least, the first and second guy to go to rescue swimmer school, we sure as shit weren't going to be the first one sent home.
Nice.
That's quite the motivator. especially when the entire Coast Guard is watching.
Definitely.
So yeah, it was cool. I mean, day one, we were running. Running was not my forte at all. I had a major knee injury before that where I tore 3 out of 4 ligaments. I could swim like no tomorrow, but the day was mostly outside running, pull-ups, sit-ups, just burnout. And the first couple days, laughably, I would go at the end of the day, go back to my barracks room and go to sleep, and then whether it be Kelly or one of my other classmates would have to come and get me, force me to come eat. I'd eat and go back to bed. That's how wiped out I was. It was just ugly. But the cool part, you're going to laugh at this or maybe not, being a different school, is I was a senior guy there. So if we weren't running with the instructors, we had to run at my pace. So I'd slow everybody down so I could run, and we'd still be running 5 miles. However, it was at my pace, and there was a lot of animosity because of that. But I got better as the time went on. Almost 4+ weeks of school, it was ugly. So,
because how old are you and what rank are you?
I was an E5, just barely turned E5. I was an ASM 2, and so in '84 I was 24.
Okay.
And like I said, the Coast Guard, we had none of these programs. No one cared if you were fat. There wasn't any weigh-in. The rules were so much different. I mean, if you had a problem, back in the day, we just give people a bigger flight suit.
Right.
So it's not necessarily the same. But to give you an idea, I was probably 25 pounds heavier than when I left school. So when I arrived, I weighed 25 pounds more. They just tore me up. But when we left, we were pretty studly.
How long is that school at the time?
It was 4 weeks. Yeah, 4 weeks. And it was just intense. It just never ended. And they had such a group of instructors, and I don't know if it's true or not, but we used to tease they were just burnouts from something else, and they sent them to rescue swimmer school to work on their anger management.
Okay.
Yeah. And there were some guys, my class, I had a guy named AE1 Ewing, Dan Ewing. Ultimately, I think he retired as senior chief. Phenomenal guy, good leader, good everything else. But then we had other guys that their goal was to hurt you. And my school was what we call pre-𝗲𝐸𝐾𝐸, if anybody heard anything about that. And 𝗲𝐸𝐾𝐸 was the young airman who they ended up killing, which changed all the rules at rescue swimmer school.
Right.
So when we were in the pool, we had one guy named A.W. something Rose, and this guy was a terror. I still have memories of him today. And he would try to hurt you, take you to the bottom of the pool, and your choice was you escaped using whatever means necessary, right? Or he took advantage and brought you back to the surface. And that happened more frequently than not. People would lose sleep over him. Nobody wanted to get in line. So maybe in the school now, they'd give everybody a number and you'd line up in certain lines that were instructors. When we went through, they'd say, they want 4 equal lines, whatever that turns out to be, right? And then the instructor would either stand there and you'd get in an instructor's line for whatever the pool drills were for the day. I learned really quickly, because young Mr. Rose was hurting people, that if I didn't show that I was scared, I'd get in his line and he'd be easier on you because he'd go after the other quote fish that he'd be able to take advantage of. So very early on, I learned to get in his line, get it over with quickly, and he'd move on to somebody else that he could torment.
Nice.
So I think that saved my rear end.
Yeah.
So, crazy times, just constantly wet. UDTs, we lived in those bloody things. Everything was wet all the time. Nothing ever dried. Just plain harassment. And then every day going, is today the day? Today you're going to quit. You're going to quit today. I'm going to make you quit today. It was intense.
So swimmer school now is basically, you go maybe roughly 7:30 to 4 or 5 at night. What was the typical day, the duration of the day? Was it longer or shorter or about the same?
No, it actually varied. And the reason it varied is the weather was pretty intense. So we had Black Flag Day, days you weren't supposed to work out. So if they knew that was coming, we started earlier and then went into the pool. So the day just, if anything, started earlier and we were done when they said we were done.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of depended on what the lesson was for the day, how everybody was doing, whether they thought we were motivated. And that was probably the greatest thing, is they spent a tremendous amount of time subjectively determining our motivation for the day. And then depending if they thought it was lacking, increase whatever endurance skill we were working on at that time. So yeah, it was interesting. All good training though. I mean, I think it was probably one of the greatest things that, for me personally, that ever happened. I was one person when I arrived. I was a different person when I left. So yeah, good times. But all the same stuff you guys do now.
Yeah, but what we want to know is like, what are some of the egregious things that occurred that nowadays you'd be like, oh my God, this instructor would be gone. What are some of those examples? So you talk about like the verbal harassment. Was there physical stuff going on too? Because I know in boot camp they used to punch you and stuff.
Yeah, that's a whole different story. So yeah, boot camp was different too. But yeah, these guys would come in and they wouldn't grab you necessarily outside the pool, but once you got on the water, it was a new day. Give you an example. One thing that happened that freaked us all out. We had, oh God, his name escapes me, but it doesn't matter. They took him to the bottom of the pool and got him in a headlock. But he was trying to wiggle his head out. Somehow he got it between his arm and the chest. They dislocated his jaw. So he can't speak, right? He's chug-a-lugging water, right? They're bringing him back up. They're yelling at him to speak or say something, right? He can't because his jaw doesn't work. He's just, poof, down to the bottom he go again, right? So they ended up taking him back out, pulling him out on the side of the pool, right? He went off to medical. That rattled our cage a little bit. And then we just went on. Nobody cared.
Jesus.
So, but yeah, underwater, again, I'll go back to young Mr. Rose. He would hang on to you so tight that we would grab extremities that we'd be able to grab and squeeze with all our might so he would let go so we could escape just for a second, right, and try and get away. And that was how it worked. And then when he got tired of it, he'd lighten up on you. Then we had, outside, we had endurance running. We had a guy named Guerrero, and I don't remember his first name, but this guy had tree trunks for legs, right? If he was 5'5", I'd be amazed. Just absolutely ripped. But his legs were easily almost as close to his waist, which obviously is an exaggeration. But, and he'd take us running, and this little SOB, it would just be forever. And then when we got tired, it wasn't that we were resting. We were doing sit-ups or push-ups. So you run or do sit-ups or push-ups. So we're trying to get breaks by doing sit-ups and push-ups so we wouldn't have to run any farther. It was just incredible. Or that's where I first came up with the phrase. I think I heard it. They'd pull up a chair and say, we're going to do push-ups and sit-ups until they got tired, and they're sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
So you were just going. And then if you quit, obviously there was just intense verbal harassment, which in turn had a trickle-down effect. It went to everybody else. But it taught you about yourself. When you left, you were confident.
Yeah.
Was there a quitting system? For our school, there's that whole no-go system. You get 3 per tests, and I think, 7 total within the school. Did they have something like that?
I think they did. There was ability to roll back because I know in your multis, you had a chance if you failed, you could come back and do it again. And then after that, you were just disenrolled, period. It wasn't a question. Nobody asked you. And then you had the time at any time going, I quit, or something like that. And everything had changed. They'd walk you to admin, send you home. So yeah, it was pretty short and sweet. And then once you did it, there was no change in your mind. There wasn't, I was rash. Can I come back and try again? Nope, you're finished. Until I went through, I've got a letter from the commandant as well as the captain of the base. Our class that went through, all medically qualified. So take that with a caveat, right? It's not the same number that started or anything else because we had rollbacks too that came into the class. But all medically qualified people graduated. And I was the 4th honor graduate in the history of the school. So at that point in time, it was a pretty big deal. And I think it still goes back. They thought for sure I'd quit within a week. And like I said, I had that part dangling over me that I wasn't going to be the first guy to go home. That wasn't how I was going to be remembered.
So you're the fourth graduate, but you're saying it's not every class then?
Before that, no. So swimmer school had been around for, I honestly don't know how many years before that. The criteria at that point in time when Kelly and I went through to be an honor graduate was everything, no surprise, from leadership to overall ability to, where you started, where you went to, all those things. And for whatever reason, they ended up, picking me. And then, like I said, it sent a trend. But, before that, it was vertical. And according to them and everybody I talked to, they said the rules didn't change. I think they were just absolutely amazed that Kelly and I graduated. It's just how it was. But there was pressure. Headquarters would call down on a weekly basis. They'd get a sit rep from the school how we were doing. It wasn't a game. And they'd tell us, come back, hey, so-and-so called, hey, they wanted to know how you were doing. If you quit, whatever. And I'm sure they put their own spin on it. But there was a lot of visibility too. I'm glad they didn't break my jaw.
Yeah. I can imagine the instructors were that was even more motivation for them to make you try to quit if the freaking some captain at headquarters is calling down or some admiral's calling down, asking how you're doing,
Oh, yeah. I think so. It was a goal for them. And they were clear about it. I think Kelly will give you the same story. They didn't mince words when it wouldn't have broken their hearts if we left. But imagine where the program would be now. I'm sure there'd be somebody after us, but who knows, right?
Yeah.
So cool times. Some great friends that we met out of there. So neat things. So that was swimmer school. It was a month of hell.
Yeah. So, one of the things you mentioned and talked about here is escapes and releases. And you're talking about just grabbing, is it Instructor Rose's appendages, if you will? Yeah. So was there not like a set procedure per se? It was just use any means necessary to get control of this combative survivor?
That was, pretty much it. But see, all these guys, their backgrounds, they were all pretty well fit and incredibly strong. So if you're, for me, 5 feet, 9, hey, we get in the pool, we're going to the bottom. Oh, by the way, I'm at, my 15,000th flutter kick for the day, right? And all that. Well, they're pretty fresh. So we're at the bottom. They have all the strength and those things. They would get around you, grab onto you, whether it's sharks and daisies, whether you couldn't see eyes or closed. They'd sneak up on you with no warning. It wasn't part of the drill. They just enjoyed it. So you'd be doing something else, whether it was, getting ready for a military double pickup or, trying to splash, we're going to do pull somebody from underneath a parachute and somebody just tag you. And down to the bottom you would go, right? So I think the pool was 15 feet, so we're, and if you didn't get that one breath of air and you're trying like crazy, most of the time, as you know, maybe you got a half, it's a long ride. So they would take you to the bottom, their arms around their neck, they're trying to choke you out, you're trying to get away. So yes, we would squeeze appendages.
Yeah. That sounds, a little trickier than current rescue swimmer school. These sneak attacks are pretty rare that they occur in the new school. So, that's pretty cool, like unpredicted attacks.
And they said that was real life. Their motto is when you leave here, school itself would be worse than anything you'll ever experience out in the fleet. That was their goal. And they were proud of that. And none of this was going to happen in the open seas, anybody else. It just isn't. But they thought that was the criteria in order to pass or fail. And as you remember, there's no bottom, there's no sides. You grab the side, it's done. It's a long day again. You're doing flutter kicks for who knows how long. Or they'd send you back to the locker room and you'd have to sit in the locker room while everybody else is finishing up their training, just to think about it.
Oh man, I remember I had a short period of time where I developed swimmer's ear, where basically you get the swelling, it's within, what do you call it?
Eustachian tubes, maybe?
Yes, thank you, eustachian tubes. That's the one. So anyway, super infected, and I was like, oh man, I was like fighting for this for a while with this like pain going down to the bottom of the pool, and after a while, like a couple of days, I'm like, I can't stand this pain. I can't go to the bottom of the pool anymore. So I was like, should I go to medical? And medical is like the airman graveyard. You kind of avoid that at all costs. I was like, I'll do it. I'm going to go. So I went, and they're like, well, your ear is shut. Like there's no hole anymore. It's just like flat now. So you need to take some days off. And I was like, I think I only was able to, I took 2 days off. They wanted to give me a week off, and they gave me like these drops and antibiotics. But just those 2 days, I remember feeling like such a piece of shit, just like standing on the side of the pool and just like watching people. And yeah, you start to feel terrible about yourself. Same as if you quit or take a break or something, right. You start to really hate yourself there on the sidelines.
I mean, for us, I'll be honest, there was no medical. You went to medical, it was done. So right. Unless you had a bona fide, I can't do this, no matter what, you may not be able to do it at 100%, but, unless you couldn't get in the pool and swim or run or whatever, you were doing it because you were finished, if not. And to be honest with you, that transitioned into when we first started standing duty and all that. I mean, you didn't go to medical. You didn't get grounded. You didn't, I just limped. Hey, okay. I mean, we lived on Drixerol. I mean, if you can see from a thing, with this nose coming out from 15 or 20 feet, I sucked up some water when I hit the ocean, right? So I had a constant sinusitis, all those things. We lived on Drixerol. Now Drixerol's grounding, but back then we're eating it twice a day. We're eating, at the tail end of my swimmer days, just to give you an idea, I was eating 3,200 milligrams of Motrin a day to take the edge off, because my legs hurt, but nobody cares. If you go to medical, you're grounded, then you let down the rest of your guys, can't stand duty. That means maybe somebody else has to double up. There's so many factors involved that you just didn't do that. So, and rescue swimmer school, like I said, medical, you would have been done. Everybody I know that went to medical never came back.
Right. Well, I think how the school has evolved now, it has gotten smarter in the sense of knowing how to push the candidates in a more educated and physiologically efficient way. So like it might be like these sprints of pushing hard and the struggles, and there's still like the whole like first 2 weeks of really weeding people out. But then eventually, heck, when we were there, they were teaching foam rolling, they were teaching proper diet, proper sleep etiquette, all these things to really maximize your own efficiency and not break down, which I know. Right. And I've heard that back in the day was certainly not a thing, right? They were
my gosh, nowhere close. It has evolved so much and gotten so much better. I could only wish we had some of these things. Right. I mean, that's the gist of it. I mean, our workout, if I remember correctly, and other guys would probably have to chime in, is I'm pretty sure we ran 5 miles. This is every day. We swam a mile in the pool, did our push-ups, sit-ups, and all that. Oh, and did I tell you, for the most part, it's before the workday started, because we had an appearance problem if we were working out when everybody else was out on the hangar deck doing whatever it is we're supposed to be doing. So we do all this beforehand, then start our regular day, and whatever that entailed, whatever maintenance, we all, like I said, had to be qualified in an airframe, right? So at Elizabeth City, when I got there, I was an H3 flight mech, already, qualified at that. So I recerted. Obviously, I was a rescue swimmer. We were implementing the program, a lot of flights. I was a drop master and a load master too. So I'd fly on C-130s, doing that mission also. It was expected of everyone, right? So you had to be proficient at that as well as trying to do your swimmer thing. So it was a tough balance, right? And then, like I said, some people absolutely valued the swimmer program. Others did not. We were just prima donnas, just how it turned out.
You graduate Navy swimmer school. You go straight to E-City. Was that the process, basically?
No, I went back. I was stationed at Barbers at that time, so I think I went back for a couple months, and then I got an urgent PCS, and the first 5 ultimately arrived at Elizabeth City to start the swimmer program, and then we spent about a year figuring out what we need to do. While there's procedures for the Navy, they're flying starboard deltas off an aircraft carrier. That's not what we do, right? So we had stuff all the way from how long can we last in our wetsuits? Because remember, when we came out, all we had was Navy wetsuits, right? That's what we were issued. So we had a, long, short, that was about it. There was no dry suits. I mean, one of the first things we did in an H3 with Master Chief Farmer, Hugh O'Doherty, Ken Coughlin, anyways, guys that started the program up, officers as well as, the Master Chief, we had to see how long we could last. And we went out in the winter in East City in our wetsuits, all the different variations of it, and we spent time in the water seeing how long we could last. And you want to talk about being freaking cold, boys. We're back in the plane shaking so violently, and I don't know if it was Master Chief, but somebody was questioning our manhood on whether we could go back again. So we had a bunch of energetic, motivated, I can go, and we'd go back out to see if we could take it longer. And the funny part behind it is they're like, hey, we need to take your temperatures, and their original plan on how they were going to execute that process was not acceptable. And then we ended up, I think we ended up eating like a pill that was able to get our core temperature or something like that a little bit later. And they were able to read, something. But that's how we started. We didn't know. And then, teaching flight mechs before there was a syllabus. Oh my God. I'm sure you guys have experienced some, but getting yanked out of the water at 200 feet a minute, with 80 foot of cable already out with slack, that hurts.
Yeah.
And realize you guys have a tri-P and you have all those things now. Dude, all we had was, HBU 11, went underneath our armpits, right? Harness over the top, right? Or we'd be using a sling back in the day, not like yours, but the military sling. And I swear to God, I got an inch taller.
So you're saying basically a strap, like it was basically just you were wrapping yourself. There was no harness. There's nothing around your legs. There's nothing around your chest.
There was a harness that basically went around your chest right here, and you had two straps over the top, and then you had a quick disconnect that came out on the front that you'd either clip into the hook. It had a V-ring in it, that you could clip in that it would pull up, or if you had a military aviator, you take your quick release, clip it into his D-ring, and then you go up together. So it was a military double pickup, right? Yeah. So, but now imagine you got the strap underneath your chest. I just hooked into the 185, 200-pound person, right? And then they jerk you out of the water at 200 feet a minute, right? Or they drag you through through the troughs or the crest of the waves, right? So we stop the swinging. So if the aircraft's like this, right, you're being hoisted like this, so you come out of the water, obviously you've got to swing. Well, you want to stop that, right? So they just smack us into the water and then pull us straight up.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So, but those are all the things we had to learn. Nobody knew, right?
Yeah.
And then what the benchmark was to be a good flight mech. And obviously some are way better at it than others, right?
Were there trepidations as far as utilizing the rescue swimmers at first by the flight mechanics?
I don't think from a flight mechanics, but I think in all honesty, nobody saw our use, because for how many years were they able to do it without it? Even more so, from the pilots, and I'm going to say from Coast Guard pilots. Most of the pilots that came from another service had no issues, and they were the best sticks. We had a guy at Elizabeth City, another name drop, Dave Gunderson. He retired as a captain, but he was a 53 driver for the Marines. Then he transitioned to the Coast Guard. He could stand an H3 on its tail, put it anywhere. His check flights for other pilots, we'd be flying up the Pasquotank at tree level. He'd just turn, take his hands off the controls and go, "You got it." And he'd wait and see what the person would do, right? And he'd be like, no, treetop. So we're within 20 feet of the treetops flying up, right? That was his check ride. So we loved flying with him. Then again, some of the other pilots, we were drawing straws to see who had to go, because it would hurt. And a lot of the initial swimmers, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not one of them, fortunately, have back problems. I do not.
Yeah.
We got 10% automatic disability for having that harness coming out of the Coast Guard.
Wow.
So, yeah, crazy times though, but the best times ever.
So when you get to East City, what's the process? So as far as like from the time you're like working to get qualified as a swimmer to actually standing duty, how long did that take? Because you're figuring out wetsuits, you're figuring out gear, everything. What's
By March of 85, and correct me, I may be wrong on this date, we became operational at that point in time. So probably
Pretty
6 to 7 months, really fast. And operational, what we consider that these days versus back then, it was a little bit different. We could get in the airplane and survive the event. And that's pretty much how it turned out. But we spent more time sitting in the back. The pilot they'd force the pilot to take us, and he would just tell us right up front going, hey man, you're coming, but I'm not using you. So don't bother getting out of your flight suit. Don't bother, doing any of this stuff. And so that was kind of frustrating. We went on a lot of medevacs, doing those things. Rick Wolford, who was one of the first 5, he was actually the first guy to splash, and pick somebody up. I was actually on a medevac in 1985. I was the first rescue swimmer to get a commendation medal, to get any medal while assigned as being a rescue swimmer. So that was me too. So and that was a pretty hairy medevac.
What was hairy about the medevac?
To be honest with you, it started out as a vessel called the Jean Marie. It's amazing what you remember. It was still daylight. It was early morning. This individual, it was a scalloper shrimp boat, and my memory's just not that great. But the bottom line is they were shorthanded, and the crewmen, that as the cable was coming up, they're pulling up the nets or the scallop. I forget what it's called, but anyway, so all that was coming up. Somehow he got pulled into the winch, got stuck. So he got pulled into the winch, went over the top, and the cable started going around him. And so at that point in time, it basically flew off the cable. He went out the backside, and all the cable started landing on him. So the extent of his injuries were, at first, when he got caught on it, it cut off 3 of his fingers, which we found. He ended up with a fractured femur. He had a broken collarbone where he was absolutely sunk. He had lacerations because there were wire strands on the cable itself. As it was going around and landing on him, just cut through his clothes and cut through him. So when I ultimately got there, nobody had moved him. Nobody had done anything. He's just back behind the winch between the doghouse and that with all the cable on him. So they lower me down, and not really knowing, the medevac description originally was nowhere close to what we found. I start pulling, cable off, and the guy just has more injuries than you could imagine. So I got a chance to do some pretty creative thinking, got the crew involved. First time, I don't think they use them anymore, but we used mask pants. We're military anti-seizure or anti-shock pants, and they're basically blow-up pants that go on your legs and your abdomen, and the whole purpose is to push all the blood back into the thoracic cavity, right? So you still had blood flow. Then I used a hair traction splint because we had the fracture of the femur, so his leg was angled. I had to straighten it out to get in the Stokes litter. So we straightened his leg out, right? Got the mask pants on. He's bleeding like a sieve. But, the biggest injury he was worried about, he had one of the strands go between his legs, and he had a cut. I think it nicked his femoral artery because he was leaking, but it cut through his testicle, right? So without getting too gory, if you haven't ever seen it, it looks like a kidney bean when it comes out of the sack, excuse the term, right? That was the only thing this man was worried about, is that I was able to save that for him, which we did ice, put it all sort of back together, bandage him back up. Bleeding was the bigger issue that we had, obviously. So we stopped most of the bleeding, and then we got him up in the helicopter, and he lived. The last piece was just before I left, I had to go find his fingers, which I did, put them in a Ziploc bag, threw it in my pocket in my SAR-1, and off I went. So he lived through it, though, which was absolutely incredible. Stroke of luck, because he was hurt. So, yeah, good case.
That is a good case.
So good times, right? And then getting a medal was a big deal, too, because the program itself, and I don't know all the dynamics, they didn't want to make prima donnas or glorify the swimmer program, right? Because there weren't a lot of flight mechs. And back in 1985, a commendation medal was 3 points on the service wide and not given out very often. I mean, rare air medals, if even, right? So it was a big deal. And I was only an E5. Just there was a rank structure. But it started out, I think, as an air medal. I actually still have the paperwork somewhere upstairs, where the admiral came back and said, no, we're going to give him a comm. And, I got a comm signed by the admiral saying, hey, good job as a rescue swimmer. So that's the first one in the Coast Guard ever. So
very cool. Yeah.
And then I think you asked about being an EMT. I actually was an EMT starting at my first unit at Air Station in San Diego. They sent me to EMT school back then. So I'd done it for a long period of time.
Yeah. What EMT school did they send you to? Did we have a Coast Guard EMT
Petaluma.
school at the time? Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Petaluma. Yeah.
Wow. Probably in the same building still.
Yeah, probably. I mean, some of the best parties I ever went to. Ooh, did I say that? Yeah. And we learned a lot. Obviously probably the best thing out of the whole school was doing ER time. And they were staunch about us doing that. Obviously, that's where we learned the most. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I don't know. Went to research 3-4 times. Good times because I was shoot a swimmer for 13 years before I went to OCS. Or not a swimmer. 10 years as a swimmer. 13 years as an aviation survival man.
How many air stations did you go to as a swimmer? Would it, I guess, 3? 2 or 3?
No, as a swimmer, only 2. Elizabeth City, and then my first time, I'd made first class at Elizabeth City. Had an opportunity to do really well in the service-wide, so I was the only guy advanced for E5, and no, that's not true. A couple for E5. I was the only guy advanced for E6 and only guy for E7. But short story was I went to Brooklyn when we started the first East Coast 65 unit.
Right.
And that was the best unit ever. Unit ever. Good times.
Yeah, in the city. Well, like why? Yeah, what would go on?
Oh, just a unique, group of people. And Brooklyn was, we weren't all New Yorkers, that's for sure. So, we'd go into from Brooklyn down into Flatbush Avenue and go to a club and all that. And you'd have the, Craig Dunbar from Arkansas to, Steve Ober from California to, we're wearing topsiders and shorts and not everybody else was. Dunbar's, wearing his big cowboy hat and, boots. And then we had other guys, Senior Chief Al Lavelle, who retired before he went warrant. He was married, so, he lived farther out in Long Island. Harold Hoffmaster was there. Just what a crazy group of people, and we started up the program, went there, and the same thing, tremendous animosity on the hangar deck. We were a bunch of prima donnas, got all the toys, they let us go work out. There was no initial requirement to be qualified in the 65 as a flight mechanic, but we made everybody get a pre-flight, post-flight. It was encouraged, but you had to, at a minimum, get a pre-flight, post-flight, and then go through the transition of making all their flight mechs and pilots rescue swimmer qualified. So, crazy times. And then it was New York. And then that was the best known secret ever. Like I said, Brooklyn Air was just incredible. Give you an example, we had a morale cowman at Stratton Mountain in Vermont, right? So I think for like $20, you'd go up and rent the cabin and go skiing, and you have free ski, lift and ski passes to, just an incredible morale program because I think our exchange sold more alcohol and cigarettes than anybody in the Coast Guard. So we had a lot of capital coming back to help with the morale program.
I was going to say the culture then was very different. Weren't you guys allowed to drink beer at the station? Was that like part of the culture?
Oh, absolutely. We had a bar. Yeah, we had a bar, not only the Oak Club, but we actually had a bar across the street, which most of my ASMs bartended at, right? So we do our day thing, walk over club, and it was predominantly frequented by not Coast Guard, but NYPD and firemen. We were packed every night. And so, no better environment than drunk guys with guns. That's how it was. So, and it made money, money there too. It was the dark, dismal. Thank God you never turned on the lights because everybody gets scared on probably what was growing. It's just, how it was. And then parties at the shop, that was it. We had the nicest shop by far. We built it ourselves. It was pristine. Blue's my favorite color. So everything was blue Vidmars, blue floor. We stripped and waxed the floors every Friday. It was pristine. And And then, the EO and others, Friday, 2 o'clock, come in, we'd lock the door. There's always beer in the fridge, crack a couple. Duty guy wouldn't, obviously. And then, the weekend would start. So,
Nice.
the times were incredibly different.
Yeah.
And everybody walked around. At that point, probably what the program didn't want and we turned into is we became the rescue swimmers. It'd be like, Chief Ober in the shop's here. Okay, we can start now. That's, kind of how it was. And I stood duty. So imagine an air station, right? Prior to that, when you make chief, usually back in the day, in my day, they wouldn't stand any more duty. It was more of a figurehead, whatever the case. Well, I came back and stood duty because we didn't have enough guys. So I'm an E7, right? Doing all my chiefly stuff. And they call me, I'd come in and stand duty and let my third class go home. And that was just wasn't the mantra, They struggled with all that. And it slowly changed and got better, but they just couldn't handle it. And in the beginning, there was no urgency really to help us out. We took rinsed off on the hangar deck in the winter in New York at Brooklyn on the hangar deck using the warm water from, I'm not sure where the water came from, to hose ourselves off on the hangar deck. And we'd strip down to our just our underwear or whatever we're wearing underneath it, lycras, right? Standing there with a hose over the top of us, right? Getting our gear clean, then go in and try and, get cleaned up. And that's before we rebuilt the shop and did other things that we had our own shower and we could hang stuff up and got a washer and dryer. But man, that took probably 2 years. So much different. But again, some phenomenal cases, some incredible pilots, that could just fly, a 65. Engineering officer loved us. The CO loved us, which was, fortunate. I did not going into the CO's office. I'd walk in and go, hey, you got a minute, Cap? Everybody else, JOs, are standing at the door waiting for me to finish. So it was a different time.
What was the culture like as far as, I know that whole motto of we have to go out, or it was like...
Yeah, you have to go out, but you don't have to come back.
Yeah. How did that come up? How did you see that on a day-to-day on your missions?
Well, I think everybody pretty much had that, that mindset. I think it goes all the way back to school, and we, taught individuals to have confidence in themselves. And I think the ones that were able to become rescue swimmers at that point in time, back in the original days, you had there was no lack of self-confidence on what you could do. And so we never advocated that. There wasn't a time that you couldn't, complete the mission, nor was there an example we could come up with that you would say no. Now, I'm not saying that was smart, all right, by any stretch, but we get in the plane and you guys, I'm sure there's 2 sets of adrenaline, right? So the first one's like, I'm gonna get a chance to do this. They're gonna deploy me. I'm gonna do A, B, C, D, and E. That's the first set. You push off from the airplane, depending on the altitude. Hopefully you're not rotating because you're that high, right? And you're going to do a face plant. But let's say you get through all that, right? You get in the water, then the second adrenaline kicks in and going, oh my God, okay, now what? And the helicopter, as it's flying away, as it's pulling out of its hover, gets really small, right? So you're like, what the heck? Where am I going to go? So then you go and do whatever the mission is you need to do, and then wait for pickup. You had ultimate faith they'd be able to come and get you, and everything in between, you were on your own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we just wouldn't settle. That was never an answer or a conversation that I recall. Hey, I was worried I wouldn't be able to get it done. That just didn't come up.
Right.
They were so excited for the opportunity, and especially if you were able to do stuff that was within your training, is what you trained for, wanted to do, lived and breathed. That was awesome. And the thing that was really neat too, somebody'd have a case, and I'm sure it's the same way now. You come back and everybody was there. We want to know what happened. What'd you think? Everybody's jacked up, right? Because it was just such a good time. And that's when it started getting better, because we'll use Brooklyn, not necessarily Elizabeth City, but Brooklyn. Then the flight mech would come in and go, oh my God, I thought this was going to happen. I thought, and it'd be a lot more camaraderie, and obviously success played into it. So imagine if you were that one guy where you didn't succeed. I don't think we were willing to take that risk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Were you there when the first woman to become a helicopter rescue swimmer was in place? Because I don't know what year that was.
No, that was later on. There were no, when I went through school, there was no, females that, had made it through school. I know, I think some had possibly started or tried. I just don't have my history on straight, but it just wasn't, something. I just remember, the push was, and ultimately they were able to, you just couldn't change the requirements, of
right.
which, nobody did. So I think it's all, well and good. But no, it just wasn't something that came out. And there were very few females at an air station to begin with.
Right.
Right.
Period. At Elizabeth City, I think there were a couple female pilots, might have been a couple air crew, and I apologize for not, really remembering that. And I know at Brooklyn, we had two female pilots, both great sticks, by the way. And then I think we had two, air crew members that were either ATs or AEs.
Right.
But, no ADs, that I remember. There could have been, I just don't remember.
Yeah.
So, that just wasn't the mantra, which I think would have changed things up because, there's so many other factors. I've got, grown men standing on the hangar deck, literally getting naked, right? So, so many things have gotten better that, we're not doing some of the dumb stuff we did. And I'm not going to say there was hazing, but we were pretty hard on each other,
I was gonna say, the whole sexual harassment and also sexism and stuff. It's just different times, and even now, there's always that progression, things that could evolve. Because even when we were in boot camp, the bathrooms for the girls' barracks rooms, there wasn't enough toilets, so they were using the urinals. So I'm just saying, it takes time for those things to. Unfortunately, it takes time for those things to come to being current and updated.
Oh, and it does. And thank God, knock on wood, it did, because it's a key part, and you need to include all those pieces. We just did, at least in my time, it just wasn't at the forefront.
Yeah.
And then, and the training was hard. I was hard on my other ASMs at the time, and if you ever get a chance to speak to some of them, I had a certain expectation. I had a certain expectation on their quality of work and how they represented themselves, and all that. Which, humorously now, I've got people who came back and said, "I'm so glad you did that." But at the time, I didn't love that so much. And if you were a weak swimmer, what I perceived, it doesn't mean they were, but if I perceived you as being not as confident as the rest of the guys, I'd ride them pretty hard. Which I regret.
Did you ever work with Shivers? Because Shivers, just
No.
for those
I know
listening,
who he is. Yeah.
So he's quite the character, and listening to his sea stories was quite interesting. But basically, at least when we were going through swimmer school, if you made it to Shivers, you were well on your way to becoming a swimmer, right? And just hearing his antics and all his rants. At first you're like, oh my God, I made it to Shivers. I'm like, I might become a rescue swimmer. But by the end, you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can hear another Shiver story right now. It's so intense.
And I think it's interesting you guys get to be with the same instructors. So you realize all my guys at the time, they either went to swimmer school, whether it was at East City, or they went to Navy Rescue Swimmer School, right, which is a majority of my folks. So they went to ASM school, went to rescue swimmer school, then they'd come to me. So there was a break. And when they got to me, it was my job, to mold them into whatever it was. So hopefully they became leaders and ran their own shops, which pretty darn close to all of them did. But the rules were so much different. We did some crazy stuff. Another sea story, since, Roger Chivers, I got to show him up some. We all became divers at Brooklyn, and we were allowed to do that because it wasn't on the Coast Guard dime. We were able to finagle the emergency services unit from New York, which it was right next door to us, had their own helicopters and emergency service unit. They were all divers, so we convinced them, and they took us on a month-long program, give or take some. And we all became PADI rescue divers, right? So it was all pretty cool. So the whole shop, we bought all the dive equipment, did all those things. But laughably, what we did is we ended up, there was a pier at Brooklyn where we ran the pumps, little, pump shack outside, all those things. But it was falling down, rotting and all that. So the swimmer shop, my shop, We all borrowed the Mark V, helmets and some of the ESU gear. We rebuilt the pier. So we're underwater using their tools, drilling. We put beams back up, rebuilt it. And so the times where it was going to go one of two ways. We were going to be praised for our initiative, or somebody got hurt, and we were all done, right? Needless to say, nobody got hurt, but that gives you an idea of the rules were so much different. Nowadays, you'd have to have approval. They never let a bunch of amateur who drove in the NYPD paddy wagon, right? Literally their paddy wagon to go to our dive sites, right? So we'd all pile out of the paddy wagon, swim in a quarry in our Henderson dry suits, right? And if you want to date yourself, you had squeeze. So you're at 100 feet for your check ride, right? You've got bruises. It's pinching your legs because your suit's so bad, right? Water's coming in from all the pinhole leaks. You get back up to the top, get in the paddy wagon. We stop on the parkway on the way home, pull off to the side. They turn on the lights. We get out of the paddy wagon and drink beer. Why we didn't drink beer in the paddy wagon? That was against the rules.
Also, I found it interesting because, you talk about how you like blue so much, blue floors and everything, but every swimmer shop I've ever been into has blue floors now. It's just a thing now.
Yeah, I wonder if that's where it started.
Well, yeah, the guys used to tease me because that was my pet peeve, man. If the floor wasn't shining, you were stripping. And so every Friday they got the point they knew before they went home, they had to strip and wax the floor, and they did. And you'd walk in, and I swear you could comb your hair in it. But that was also the thing. When we were doing rafts and all that, you didn't have car. It had to be pristine, and we lived by that. So, funny times, right?
Yeah.
As a senior swimmer, what are some of the leadership techniques that you've developed, or maybe looking back on it now, that you wish you had implemented as a senior leader in the Coast Guard?
Probably what I learned as I was going up, one of the key things is, one, no matter what, have faith in yourself. And that's a lot easier said than done, but everyone's got a strong point. Everyone does. And I think as a leader, sometimes we have to spend time and find out what that is, and that will foster the other parts of their professional or personal lives that you can expand and make them, better at what they do.
Yeah, I think that the piece is finding from a leadership perspective what people's strengths are, and then try and capitalize on those. My other thing that I learned, when somebody fails, and failure is a big, wide open, topic. From the military, if they work for me, they failed. And I took accountability for, I didn't train them well enough, or I didn't anticipate what the weakness was, right? Or didn't spend enough time trying to hear them tell me what the weakness was to see if I could help them. And I wish I did that better in the beginning years, versus just trying to use arrogance, being cocky, do it my way. Here's because. There's three elements to leadership, as you guys know. There's personal power, right? There's professional power, right? Where you are ranked in leadership, and the other part, your intellectual side of the house. The goal is you use all of those when you're doing, leadership functions. Probably for a while, I had intellectual because I used to be teased that I could recite the life support equipment manual and all that. That's how I wrote #1 service-wise. That's the only reason I got promoted. My service-wide scores were so far in front of everybody else with so much more time than me and more points. That was the only way I could compete. So I expected others to do that, and I didn't always show them how to do it. And I think later on, like at Brooklyn towards the end, I was able to show them what they needed to do. And for example, we had service-wide days for 6 months before the service-wide, where I'd spend an hour every week. I had a binder of questions, and what I'd do is I read the manual, and I'd write questions from the manual. Military bearing, all those, paint and color manual, back in the day. That's what got you promoted. It wasn't being good at packing parachutes, wasn't being good at understanding your life raft. It was, hey, and if you're at a 65 unit and they're asking you the C-130 questions, get the NPC cards back in the day. Study the NPC cards. I didn't do that in the beginning. And that's probably one of my greatest regrets is I knew how to do it. I just didn't teach everybody else. And I did at the end.
One thing I think leaders often struggle with is motivating individuals to be as motivated as at least they feel like they are. What are some methods that you came to find of doing that?
Probably initially when I was, really junior, I'd harass them and just, verbal, you got to do better. And I do it in front of a crowd because I apparently I didn't learn that, you praise in public and counsel in private. I wasn't necessarily always the best at that. I got way better as I went on. And then the next piece is I'd spend more one-on-one. For example, if somebody was struggling with some aspect of being a rescue swimmer, whether it's jumping out of the plane, didn't like to do it or whatever, I would take them for a ride with me and make it less casual, not a check ride, or make it more casual. And you'd make it more of a better camaraderie, type thing. Hey, we're the same. When I'm out here, I'm not the chief. I'm a swimmer, just like you. We're all the same. So here's what we need to do. Hey, by the way, I learned this. You're going to figure this one out on your own, but, try and do these sort of things. And I think I got way better at that towards the end, after I'd been a chief for a year or so, and realized I had far more influence doing it that way than telling you suck.
Yeah.
And then it worked out very well. And I think I've got a good track record. Almost everyone that I had went on to either be a chief or, become an officer, or very successful in what they do.
Very cool.
And then like I said, I think it helped me as being an officer. One of the greatest things I think is when I became an officer, and in my time, junior officers, at least from OCS, didn't have, much leadership and all that, but it gave me a patience where I was able to learn from leaders. And what I mean by that, there's good and bad leaders, and you learn from both. So make your leadership. That's the key. Don't mimic somebody else. Become you, but learn from both. Everybody's got good and bad traits. No matter what, every situation, there's good and bad. Learn from it. Be willing to learn. And that took me, God, a long time to be, I know it all. Maybe not. You don't have to be the smartest one in the room to be successful.
Yeah. And it certainly is interesting. Different leadership styles will connect better with certain individuals. Personally, and I think a lot of people could identify with this, some of the best leadership I've experienced is where the leadership truly puts their trust in you, and therefore you want to make them proud. You want to make yourself proud more than anything, and you don't want to mess that trust up. Right. And that's like a big thing. And sometimes like that's hard to do. And like, especially if you do mess something up, and for that leadership to keep putting that trust there, that's like a hard thing for them to do too. But yeah, there's certainly different techniques, and sometimes you need some more one-on-one. And
right. I had some really great leaders, I'll be honest, from other chiefs as well as other officers that gave me enough rope personally, to hang myself. Never let the rope get tight, but let me go just far enough so I'd feel the burn, if you know what I mean. And then either tell me what I did wrong or give me an opportunity to go, probably should have done this. And I found that, to be probably far more successful as an officer when I was at, strike teams as ops and XO and doing other, that worked a whole lot better than just correcting. Here's what you need to do. Here's what you're supposed to do. Versus, okay, how'd that turn out? Oh, not so well. And sometimes I found that if I had an opportunity, they would tell others, and that was far greater than I could ever do by educating. I knew the answer. They just didn't want to hear it from me. Does that sort of make sense?
Absolutely.
I hope it does. My son hates it, as he calls euphemisms all the time. Euphemisms. But one of them is here's reality. I can impact today. I can influence tomorrow, but that's as good as it gets. I can't take anything back I just said. I can't stop anything that happened 5 seconds ago. So while it's important to understand if something didn't go well, there's no point in dwelling on it because I can't fix it, right? Can't make time change, can't do anything else. But how do I impact today? And how does that input influence tomorrow? And it goes back to, for example, my leadership style that I tried, entertain now is, hey, let me show you, have faith in yourself. It's okay. I don't want you to fail. I promise. I don't, right? You don't like it when we just do dumbass things. Prefer not to do that, but it happens. The key is do you do them twice? If you do it twice, I fail, right?
Yeah.
Or at least that's the way I look at it. And it's been incredibly successful, for me. And that it doesn't work for everybody, but it works real well for me, or I think it does. I'm still alive and people still hire me, so something goes right.
Excellent.
And then, the other part is even being a young chief I didn't have a lot of chief leadership around me at the time because I was so different. One, I was young. I didn't smoke. I was in shape. So many different things when I first started. But I had, junior officers as well as senior officers who were willing to, hey, you need to refine this a little bit. Hey, you need to do A, B, and C. And there was never an environment where they tried to either damage credibility or damage my, the self-esteem. They wanted it. Last kind of joke, when I retired in 2004, after 26 years, as an Officer Coast Guard headquarters, I worked in what was called the Deepwater program. And under that, I was in the requirement shop. And so when Deepwater was big, which was the modernization of everything 50 miles out, new ships, aircraft, all those different things, we established the requirements and what the give and takes were. So we understood who was doing it, from a contractual perspective, all the performance reviews and all those things. I got sent there because right after 9/11, it wasn't 50 miles offshore anymore. Now all of a sudden it's onshore. So we needed to bring the environmental, protection and security from the beach to the cutters, to the aircraft, to all those different things. But the gist of it is in the shop, I had a unique, rating chain where I worked for the captain and directly an admiral. And they separated me from the ship drivers because I didn't go to the academy. Nothing wrong with that. I wish I did, right? I didn't have the same path as they did. I didn't have the same, pieces, right? Because I went to OCS. I was a chief before that and a rescue swimmer. So you see where this is going, right? Confidence wasn't my problem. And we were doing different initiatives at the time. When I retired, my captain standing up with the admiral, and he introduces me to the crowd of folks that graciously came, right? And he goes, Steve was unique. He was the bull in the china shop. But I want everybody to understand, he was my bull in the china shop. And while everybody thought that was a slam, I thought that was the nicest thing he could have said to me. And what I meant by it is I was focused, right? So they gave me a task. I met the task, right? And they were willing to teach me as I went along to go and do that. And I think that stemmed going all the way back to my first days as a rescue swimmer, right? From the day I arrived going, here's the task, here's what you need to do. You need to accomplish it. And then find a way in order to do that, that obviously was within whatever bounds, you were provided. And I wish now, possibly, I hope all leaders kind of look at that too. You have to balance it. But I think it's an incredible, trait that we need to carry on. Just my opinion.
Moving forward, you got any words of wisdom for future rescue swimmers? That's mostly who's listening to this podcast, as well as future leaders.
Yeah, probably for swimmers, take care of yourself. It's okay to say I'm hurt. I can give an example. We didn't go to medical. We didn't do any of those things. 20 years later, it makes a difference. You can ask any of the initial swimmers. They all have, various issues. Even butch flight, shoulder, back, neck, surgeries. So, do your best to take care of yourself. Don't downplay that, hey, if you need time off, you're doing sports medicine, they have a new way of doing X, whatever it is. Listen to what they have to say. Second thing is your days of a rescue swimmer at some point will stop. I hope you have a long, glorious, phenomenal career. Make sure you educate yourself. All right. Because when it's all said and done, you're going to probably need to do something. And while this is all great, we have phenomenal leadership skills, try and get an education, especially since I believe it's free. So do yourself a favor and go out and do that. If you have a chance to do night classes or whatever while you're in, I think if you talk to your supervisors, you can still do your job and try and do that while it's still comfortable. And then think of something else you want to do. Whether it's you want to go to officer candidate school, you want to get out and do something else, but have a plan, because when it ends, it ends. We all have great plans. We all do great things, but how are you going to carry on? Giving up the adrenaline rush is hard. All right. Getting up, I still to this day, if I'm in an air station, doing consulting work, I'll hear a SAR alarm. I get really excited. I'm pretty sure my blood pressure just flies through and I'm like, what bag can I grab and what can I get on? I don't think that changes for anybody, but you've got to find a mechanism that you can balance that. And then I think leadership, I'm not familiar enough with it. I think they've done such a better job, as the years have gone by. Try and learn from your leaders. As I said, 10 minutes ago, something like that. You can learn from both, good and bad. And that goes from the civilian populace, home, or your actual work. And be you. Form it to you. Don't be somebody else. Be you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Steve.
Hope that was good enough. Guys, it was a great opportunity. Thanks for letting me reminisce. I think I'm going to go out and walk 3 miles now because I'm feeling motivated.
Love it. Love it.
Nonetheless, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity.
Absolutely, you did.
Did I ramble on? Because my son's going to critique the shit out of me on there. So,
no,
I think it was
you
good.
You definitely didn't from this. And then hopefully in the future, again, maybe you can come on and talk more about your career. You ended up doing 26 years. So basically like you did another did you do like another 13 as an officer or 14?
No, I did 10. So I went at 13 years. I'd already been a chief for 2 years, went to OCS. And I didn't know if we'd get to it or not, but it was a funny story. So I was up for E8, right? My engineering officer, great guy, said, hey, Steve, captain says, we're not going to recommend you, which was a bluff, unless you apply for OCS because the Coast Guard needs leaders. We think they need people like you or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I called his bluff. He called mine. 6 months later, I'm at OCS. There, I'll be honest, from the day one, the story was you weren't supposed to show up to OCS in your uniform. What do you think I did? I was going to make him call me chief for a day, right? So I show up, nobody else is, right? So all day long, they're like, chief, you have to, whatever. So I'm going through all the gamut, can't talk to anybody, all those pieces. I had instructors coming up saying, I just don't like you. I'm telling you right now, I don't like you. My job is to make sure you never graduate. I don't want you in the officer corps. And then they thought because so many people were out of shape, right, since I got there, that was going to be their crux. They could make me stop. Well, I could do a lot of push-ups. I could do a lot of lean and rest. I could run as long as you wanted to. And if you wanted to be mean, you could put me in the pool and ask me how long I wanted to swim. Last story. So you may get a kick of this. We've got 60 people in an auditorium, right? It's day 2, I think, when we're there. We had a guy named, he was a lieutenant commander at the time named Walters. This guy ultimately ended up carrying the nuke bag for the president. So we're there, we're playing 20 questions, Jeopardy 20 questions. So every answer we got right, I think they took some points off. Everything we got wrong equated to push-ups, right? So we're probably at 8, 9, 10,000 push-ups, right? And I got frustrated. And every time you stood up, you had to say who you were. So I had to say officer candidate, aviation survivalman, Chief Ober. So that's my whole saying every time I said it. So I stood up because I was pissed. I was tired, right? It was a goat rope. And I stood up and said, I have a question. Okay, what's your question? I said, I don't understand. We're penalized if we give the right answer. We're penalized if we give the wrong answer. Wouldn't we better off not saying anything at all? You could have heard a pin drop, right? Everybody's like, who the F is this guy, right? And then Walters turns around and goes, what's your name? And I go through the whole spiel again, and he goes, okay, you're all dismissed. So anyways, I was on the shit list pretty much after that. Last thing, and just bear with me, I had an ASM named Steve Jutras, who was ASM with me in Brooklyn. So he went up to Cape Cod, got accepted into OCS. He was in the class in front of me at OCS. So he would tell me, because I'd see him, what was going to happen. So, Steve, the first week, they're going to get everybody up. The goal is to see who puts on the same uniform, who wears the same colors, all that stuff. So I knew it was coming. So I took my 30 people in my platoon. We all knew that answer. So they woke us up at 2. We all put on the same slacks, went outside. You could imagine what people were like, huh? At the same time, I had one of my classmates of the 30 people. They told him that, Chief Petty Officer Ober said, hey, we're going to do this A, B, C, D, and E. I got brought up for honors violations, right? Had to stand in front of the school chief. I'm not even there a week, right? And it's like, okay, I'm going home. All the academy folks, good, bad, or indifferent, were like, he needs to go. We don't accept this, blah, blah, blah. My answer was I didn't benefit myself. I benefited 30 people. What's wrong with actionable intel? Show me where it says I can't ask that stuff. Although Steve Jutras and I were forbidden from seeing each other, for the rest of the 16 weeks we were there. So that's my last story for the day. So Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Steve.
Don't let me look like a fool because I will fly to California in 5 years.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.
You too.
All right, that was Steve Ober. Again, thank you so much for coming on. And once again, Perfect Form Masterclass, your pre-orders and tomorrow. So that is half off on the Perfect Form Masterclass. Learn to better your technique, learn to train like a helicopter rescue swimmer, and you get the trainings, you get the knowledge, and you get a little bit of the how to hold your breath and get better with your underwaters. So Perfect Form Masterclass on the rescueswimmermindset.com.
Right on. And just as a reminder, we're doing this podcast every 2 weeks now. So talk to you in 2 weeks, right, Vince?
Yep. See you in 2 weeks. Goodbye.